Welcome to this episode of Learning is the New Working. This episode is sponsored by the amazing team and the creative energy at Arist. They can help you launch remote-friendly courses in a matter of minutes. Inspired by cutting-edge research, text message-based courses are fast and effective. Plus, learners absolutely love them. You can seamlessly build your own text-based courses with a platform trusted by the Fortune 500 companies and leading nonprofits alike. Try a course or schedule a demo at www.arist.co. That's www.arist.co.
And I think of it as three components to make it really successful. Number one, you need an interactive design, a design that is for communication, collaboration. Let's come together and allow the learning to happen. Number two, a skilled facilitator, a facilitator who is able to engage an audience over a screen. Number three, participants who are prepared to learn, equipped to learn, given the space to learn, the space to practice or apply what they're learning. And it really takes all three of those.
Cindy Huggett. She is a consultant, speaker, designer, facilitator, and author who specializes in technology, leadership, and learning. More specifically, she's the go-to person and a pioneer in the field of virtual training. She knows about best practices in online facilitation and learning design. She's written 4 books on the topic, all packed with tips and tricks and strategies, and you can get the details from links in our show notes. She helps organizations and training professionals move to the virtual classroom, but today we're going to talk about how our world changed in 2020. We also talk about why some organizations were better prepared than others for the global pandemic. We talk about the importance of a collaboration mindset, a set of killer features that emerged last year for online learning platforms, and the findings from our annual survey of online learning trends. We talk about why you should bring your entire body to an online training experience, and, as you heard there, we'll talk about the essential components of good online learning programs from Cindy's perspective. So listen in to my conversation with Cindy Huggett.
So I'm Cindy Huggett, and I am a virtual learning consultant. I work with global organizations to move people to the virtual classroom.
Cindy, welcome to Learning is the New Working. You and I have known each other for a long time, and I've long wanted to have you on the podcast. So we're going to have a great conversation today. And I think you have been a bit of a busy person, right?
It's been just a little busy over the last year. I love it, though.
Great. Well, let's start by just kind of sketching out your work practice for people, and then we'll get into some deeper conversation. First of all, what part of the world do you live and work in, and why?
So I'm joining from Raleigh, North Carolina. It's in the southeastern part of the United States. And my husband and I moved here to North Carolina almost 30 years ago for the weather and for a job opportunity. And it's home. We love it now. Temperate climate. We love it.
I think you probably spend most of your time on the internet somewhere, so in virtual landscape. Can you tell us what your job title is and how you would sort of generally describe the work that you do?
Well, I'm a virtual learning consultant and I'm the CEO of my own firm. So I help organizations move to the virtual classroom. I've been doing this for on my own the last 16 years. And wow. Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
I remember talking to you back in our ATD board days, and you were just, I think, setting up the business, and you were just sort of making a move into that, and time moves quickly. What were your major career steps before starting your own business?
Well, I was in grad school studying public and international affairs, and it was right around the time that personal computers were coming into the workplace, which totally dates me, but that's okay. I realized that I loved teaching my assistantship more than I loved what I was studying. So I started teaching software classes, DOS programming and Lotus 1-2-3 and WordStar, and quickly realized that it wasn't the technology, it was learning. So I moved into a few training manager and training director roles and got to do some really fun things in some great organizations. But what was the pivotal moment back in the early 2000s, so almost 20 years ago, I was told to cut my budget, stop traveling, and still provide training to my global workforce. So I took my technology background, my learning background, put them together and started doing virtual training. And that time there was not a whole lot guidelines out there. So I just started learning as I went. And that launched just about everything I've done for the last 20 years.
Amazing. Learning by doing and sort of defining the approach as you go. Probably just start by defining what you mean by virtual training. You know, we've gone through this period of time where digital transformation has been fashionable and a big focus for people. When you talk about virtual training, what do you mean?
I think it's a key question to start with because not everybody has the same definition, right? It's kind of like health. When you say health, some people think exercising, some think nutrition, some think sleeping, different aspects of it. So for me, virtual training is live online learning together with a facilitator, with a cohort or a group of people at the same time learning. There may be other components that go along with that, or it may be a series of live online events, but we're talking about the live online classroom.
And your primary audience is the people delivering those sessions, what we might call a facilitator or a trainer. Is that fair to say?
It is fair, although I work a lot with designers, teaching designers how to transform their classroom workshops to online. And I do a lot of strategy work with learning leaders in figuring out their organization's virtual learning strategy.
Great. Well, we definitely want to talk about that. Perhaps you could just tee that up by saying what kind of organizations do you have as clients and what's top of mind for them today?
So
if I have
work,
to ask.
yeah, we know what's top of mind, but most of my clients are large global organizations. They span across industries from financial institutions, manufacturing. I work with government agencies, the technology sector, hospitality. Everybody needs virtual learning. And what's really on everyone's mind now is we had a lot of Band-Aid solutions that were put into place by many organizations in early 2020. Now it's the long-term figuring out what will we keep, what was just temporary, what's the next step? Will we go back to anything in person or are we here to stay?
Yeah, interesting. So let's dive in a little bit deeper. And we definitely want to talk about 2020 and all that happened in terms of the planned and unplanned disruption of that year. I'm guessing your workload went up a little bit. In fact, I know for a fact it did as organizations scrambled to move online. What was the kind of work you were being asked to do over the course of last year? And I think you just suggested that it might have evolved a little bit.
It did a little bit. 2020 was insane for me in a good way, insane as far as everything we saw, but work-wise, as someone who's been doing virtual training for 20 years, it was like, welcome to the party. Come on, let's join in. And my existing clients were fairly well situated to make the move. They'd already been doing some virtual training. It was just expanding the number of programs, the number of people they had involved. It was a lot of organizations who had never done it before, scrambling to look for resources and not really wanting to take the time to talk about strategy, just needing to, in rapid fire, I have a course that I have scheduled next week, next month. I need to move it online. Help me now. So there was a lot more of that, a lot more of catching up to do by those organizations.
Were you surprised how much work there was to do look, you and I have been at this for decades. Yeah. I frankly was just a little bit surprised that there were many, many people and organizations who were like, oh my gosh, we really had to pivot quickly. Mm-hmm. Were you surprised by that?
Yes and no. Yes, in that we make this assumption that large global companies, of course, they have technology resources and have been doing it. But the reality was many large organizations, even smaller organizations, just weren't doing much virtual. And they were doing it when they had to. or doing it in places where they decided to experiment in the past. The organizations that had already invested in it didn't have as far to go. They've been doing virtual training for a while, but the increase in volume and everybody needed to figure out how to do it. I don't know of an easier way to say it, in that if you were doing it or not doing it or just thinking about it, you had to in 2020.
What kind of challenges do you think that people faced, either the mature thinkers around this or the fresh to it thinkers? What were the hardest problems that you were asked to help solve?
When you think about it, in some cases, it was just the very practical logistics that organizations struggled with, because they might have been set up to do virtual learning in their offices, but now with everyone working from home, struggling with bandwidth, basic bandwidth. Even somebody who worked in a location where bandwidth normally wouldn't be a problem to connect to the internet, they now had multiple family members at home doing work or school, and bandwidth became a problem. Or the organizations who are regulated by either government policy or something in their industry were faced with, well, how can I grant access on home computers, or managing the technology, the infrastructure, the logistics? That was a huge problem for many organizations. And along with that, equipping facilitators with what they needed, whether it was headsets or webcams or just the technology platform, being able to adapt to working from home. I think, although many organizations got there quickly, was initially, and for some cases still continues to be a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. I'm thinking about like school teachers, for example, and where there isn't a corporate infrastructure in place, it's been pretty tough. This sort of brings me to, how did learner needs change during this period? I'm thinking, of course, about perhaps on the constructive side, people's hunger for social engagement, but then on the other side, just the complexities of managing work and home and family and bandwidth and all those kind of things. Did you think about how design needed to respond to the kind of new reality of work from home?
Yeah, and there's so many different facets we can look at. One, I think there was a big wave at the beginning when everyone was at home or working from home. At first, it was excitement to connect. We can connect and collaborate and talk with others. And then we realized, but we're doing that all the time. I want to break from that. And so the reality set in of, we're doing video meetings all the time. Let's step back from that. So I think that was one aspect of it. The other aspect, when I think about design and what changed for many organizations, they took an 8-hour program and just moved it online to an 8-hour program without taking the time to redesign. Now, some of that was due to time pressures. I just need to convert it quickly. Some of that was due to lack of recognizing good quality design for learners, that may not be the best way to do it. And so the complexities of managing the learner experience in a longer program, maybe you had a 6-week orientation program or a full week leadership program, trying to figure out, how do we do that online and do it well to still get those learning outcomes? The learners, what they needed while they were trying to not only do their jobs, still learn, figure out virtual school. If you had other family members who were dealing with changed circumstances as well, in some cases job loss, watching what was going on in the world, right? I'm getting a little anxious just thinking about it. And we were living it, right? So yeah, all
Do you
of
think
that.
people were more forgiving during last year, as like everybody was trying to figure out new approaches? Do you think there was a little bit more kind of tolerance around?
I think the organizations that did it well had the tolerance. And, just a simple example, when we think about webcams and being on webcam, there's excitement around, we can see each other's faces. We can look at each other eye to eye and have that conversation. At the same time, when you have somebody who perhaps has a home situation that they don't want broadcast on camera, or they've got children or dogs or whatever is going on in their home life in the background that they might not want their coworkers to see. So the organizations that gave flexibility and tolerance, and it's okay to turn your camera off, or for this conversation, let's just pick up the phone because that's really all that's needed. And let's strategically determine when we'll be on camera or when we won't be on camera.